I'm going to explore masks in Adobe AE. As you guys know, masks are invaluable for collage and composite work in Photoshop, and the same is true in After Effects. Let's have a look, or well, you guys will probably or might know that I really like the work of Molly Scannell on Instagram. Love her collage work. And I thought that her kind of process or imagery could be a good starting point for an artwork generated using masks in After Effects. Really like this kind of stuff where she's playing with faceted scale further down her feed. These kind of patterned, repeating artworks are really interesting. And there's one that I particularly like, this image here, where she's used different kinds of masks. Maybe they're hand generated, I'm not sure. Most likely digitally generated. But I thought we could use some of this kind of approach as a starting point for exploring masks in After Effects. I'm going to tab back over to After Effects and let's have a look at a few things. Let's start by making a new composition. Background color is going to be white. Just work in a square format. 10 seconds is perfect. I'm going to click OK. Want to bring in a few assets, links to which will be posted adjacent to this video. I'm going to call this one Mask 1. This will be our first look at masks. Open that up and let's import some material to mask. I'm going to import a file. Start with a single video file. This one. And I'm going to drag it into our composition. Position it on the stage there, like so. And it's a kind of a studio portrait of a woman looking directly into the camera. There's a little bit of movement there, which is good. So we're going to make kind of a moving version, something similar to this here. We're going to do that using masks in AE. So to start with, I'm going to duplicate a copy of this bit of footage, and that is Command D on the keyboard. With that duplicate in place, I'm going to select the top layer. We're going to make a mask of that bit of footage. To start with, I might just offset it a little bit so we can create that kind of faceted look. Okay, so with the layer selected, I'm going to go up to one of the kind of shape making or vector tools in the tool palette up here. We've got a pen tool, we've also got a rectangle tool, and we've got some kind of other polygon shapes, vector shapes that we can use. I'm just going to start with the rectangle. And these all work the same way, and they work, kind of, you'll be familiar with how these tools work. So I'm going to come down to the stage, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag like that. And you can see that our shape has been drawn out, and it's created in the layer a mask. So if we twirl that up and twirl that down, you can see that all of these properties will twirl down, and you can see that mask, what I'm trying to get to is that the mask is an added property next to the transform properties. You can see this layer below doesn't have a mask applied to it. And we can see on the stage there a kind of a vector with points showing us where our mask is. I'm just going to bring the quality of that up to full. Okay, so we can manipulate masks and vectors in exactly the same way as we can in Photoshop and Illustrator. We're going to use our kind kind of our selection tool, and I can come over to these points and I can click them and drag them, and you can see I'm manipulating that mask there, like so. I want to create a kind of a wedge shape, so I'm going to drop that point down to there and bring that one up to there, create that nice kind of abrupt facet across the subject there. Excellent. So let's have a quick look at the mask itself and the properties inside the mask. So we've got the mask path itself, so we can keyframe that and animate it. We've got the mask feather property, so if I wanted to blur these mask edges, I can do that. So if I open that up, we can have a nice blurred edge. And we can also adjust the opacity, so if I drop that down, that element can be kind of transparent. Finally, the mask expansion. So by pixels, I can expand that mask or subtract it, which is also quite handy. And you can see that because there's a little stopwatch there, I could actually, and I will do that, over time I can animate that. So you can see that animating over time. I'll just reset that. Okay, so there's our first mask. Let's do that again. And twirl that all up. And I'm going to duplicate our bottom layer again. And I might just change these, change the names of these layers. I'll call this one base. Hitting return on the keyboard. This is going to be mask 1. I'm going to duplicate the base again, Command D, or edit, duplicate. Pop that right up on top and rename that, return on the keyboard, mask 2. So as the name suggests, I'm going to create another mask, just to alter our starting point a little bit. This time I think I'll use the our Bezier tool to draw up some kind of mask. So just remember, if you're creating masks, to have the layer that you want to mask selected, because if you don't, you'll start drawing what we call a shape. So there's a shape there, and we'll get more into shapes a little bit later, but you can see that this shape layer has been added to the layer stack, and it's actually pretty similar to Photoshop. I'm going to delete that again and make sure that I actually have the mask selected, so that when I draw something with the pen tool in a sec, it's actually going to apply a mask to my layer. And I'm going to create a kind of a fairly graphic sort of shape that sort of mask out a facet at this person's face. So something like that. Go up to there. Awesome. So if I just deselect, oops, click off that, you'll see now that we're starting to build up some interesting kind of mingled shapes, which is cool. You'll notice that in my preview pane there, I had the resolution set down to 1/4, just to speed it up a little bit. So cool, that's good. But what I wanted to show you really with that was how you can have more than one mask per layer. So if I just zoom in a little bit there, have a look at that mask and see the points that I made. I'm going to go and grab the rectangular tool, and I'm going to add some further masks around the place. And you can see there that it's adding, because I've got mask 2 selected, it's added mask 2 to my layer there. So now we've got 4 masks selected, added to that layer. It's becoming quite a complicated series of shapes now. I can also change the way the shapes interact. You'll see that I've made 4 masks there, and they're all adding to that shape. But I can change that to subtract if I like. You can see that that's kind of removed part of the image there. And if I just hide those layers below, you can see that I've kind of punched a hole through there, and I'm going to do that again with the subtract, like so. And you can see there's a couple of other operators there. So if I change that one to difference, I can kind of wedge out a little piece there. So there are a number of different operators there that you can experiment with. But yeah, with that, with those mask tools, we can make really quite complicated masks. And each of these has its own properties that you can access. So if I just wanted to feather one single part of that mask collection, I can do that. And I can also animate all of those elements over time individually. Okay, so I'll turn that back on, and we can see that, you know, I have created a kind of a bit of a abstracted motif here out of that portrait footage. And one final kind of element to masks that I wanted to show you in this little demonstration was accessing different vectors from different applications. If I, oops, I better get Illustrator up and running, which I don't have. Here's the Illustrator assets that I wanted to access. I wanted to grab this pattern of little circles that I'm quickly arranged and duplicated. Head back over to AE. So I'm going from Illustrator. I've copied all these vectors. I'll just zoom in. You can see that they're selected, and I have copied those vectors. Heading back over to After Effects, and I'm going to duplicate this base again, bring that to the top, hit return to call it mask 3 because I'm going to add a final mask. And if I have that selected and simply paste, I'm going to paste those vectors, you'll see that those vectors operate in exactly the same way as the masks that I generated inside of After Effects itself. So I've copied and pasted them, and you can see that each one of those is going to be a single mask. So I've got a lot of masks applied to that layer now. That kind of finishes off my effect, and finally shows that I can bring those vectors in from other applications and use them as masks in AE. And I mean, that gives us the flexibility of using the Illustrator vector editing tools to make, you know, really quite complicated vectors to use as masks inside of our compositions.